Welcome to the Dossetti Library. Established in 1953 after Giuseppe Dossetti's withdrawal from political life, this is now one of the biggest libraries in the world specialized in religious studies. Giuseppe Dossetti is definitely one of the preeminent figures of both Italian Catholicism and Italian civil history of the 20th century. Young professor of canon law since 1940. After the Second World War and the involvement in the Italian resistance movement, he was elected among the members of the Constituent Assembly, the parliament in charge of writing Italian constitution. He soon left politics and decided to go back to his Bologna, that is the city where he had studied law and obtained a degree in 1934. It is here, under the auspices of the newly appointed Archbishop of Bologna, Cardinal Giacomo Lercaro, that the decision of promoting a scientific approach to religious history came up. As a scientific library, books are stored and located according to precise criteria, mirroring the way how scholars carry out historical research. Therefore, the first books we come across are encyclopedias and reference works. Immediately afterwards, we encounter the last issues of the main scientific reviews and journals in the field of religious history. And finally, the primary sources, that is, main collections of printed sources from the very first centuries of Christian history. These are the only rooms whose access is free to anyone. In the library stacks, where we have our rooms too, only scholars with special permission can stay. The library offers scholars a wealth of over 400,000 books and 2,600 periodicals that cover the entire breadth of religious sciences from a historical, exegetical, and theological point of view. The acquisition of new books is a specific task of the Institute researchers who gather once a week to closely examine journal reviews and bibliographic recommendations. Here is the book's acquisition process. Books are suggested by the research team. Suggestions are supervised by me, by the library director. Then, afterwards, the librarians purchase the selected books. And when the books arrive, our librarians inventory them before provisionally storing the books on special shelves. Afterwards, the cataloging process comes. The Institute's archives are composed of a number of collections on the history of the 20th century Catholicism. In 1995, the local regional government declared our archives of significant historical interest. The first papers of our archives are those of the history of the Documentation Center, which is the name of the Institute at the very beginning. The Institute played a significant role within the history of the 20th century Catholicism. This is why these papers are of particular relevance. Then our archives were enriched by the arrival of Giuseppe Dossetti's and Giacomo Lercaro's papers. And it expanded during the research carried out for the Second Vatican Council and has since become one of the most remarkable collections of documents on conciliar events in general in the world. Other collections found in our archives include the Cronache Sociali collection, the Monsignor Angelo Spadoni collection, Don Alberto Altana collection, and Don Lorenzo Milani's collection, and many others actually. The archives are still acquiring new paper documents, and more recently, also television and cinema documents related to church history of the 20th century. within certain limits, in agree with our operators, it is possible to copy, scan, photograph documents, and due to the pandemic we are developing also electronic and digital system to consult digitally our archive documents. In 1997, the library was named after Giuseppe Dossetti, who designed its catalogue. After withdrawing from political life, Giuseppe Dossetti devoted himself to historical research with a small group of peers and colleagues. He moved his books to Bologna in 114 San Vitale and began the enormous work of building a specialized library whose aim was mainly supporting the needs of his research team. Books are located according to a Dewey-non-Dewey cataloging system. As you can see on the spines, letters refer to topic or research areas or themes. Numbers allow to quickly identify series and volumes. Of course, Dewey categories don't fit these library purposes, as the specific features of religious studies were too poor in Melville Dewey's decimal classification. For example, we use the letter A to identify theology, double A for history of theology, AB for 20th century theologians, E for canon law, and so on. There are a few locations which deserve explanation. The location SEC and the location T. SEC corresponds to edited primary sources which couldn't be stored at the ground floor. SEC 1 means that these are sources from the 1st century, and so on and so forth. And the second location is the location T. These are monographs, books on theologians and philosophers of previous centuries. For example, T third corresponds to an author from the 3rd century. T third 10 corresponds to Clement of Alexandria. I sincerely hope we can see each other sometime after the pandemic. I wait for you all in Bologna at the Dossetti Library.